Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and in today's episode, we're continuing that series of videos that I've been doing, talking about each individual NHL team, their players, if I think you should draft that player or not in fantasy this year. This episode is about the Nashville Predators. Before we get started, guys, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this year, so every subscription counts. It's absolutely free, so just hit that button for me. Thank you so much. Without further ado, let's jump into my projected lines for the Nashville Predators. And on that top line, there's Forsberg, Johansen, and Tolvanen. Just like last year, on that second line is Granlund, Duchene, and Kunin. Third line, Grimaldi, Glass, and Tomasina. On defense, we got Josi, Filip Ekholm, Alexandre Carrier, Borowiecki, Fabro, and in nets, we've got Saros and Rittich. Now jumping into the players that have some fantasy relevance. First on the list, guys, is Juuse Saros, currently being drafted around 60th overall. That is the 10th goalie going off the board in drafts. And in my opinion, you're getting a lot of value with Juuse Saros. This guy's going to get like 90% of the starts in Nashville, right? The backup is David Rittich, so he's no superstar. And Saros was already given like almost all the starts towards the end of the year last year. And they had Pekka Rinne, who's a better goalie than David Rittich, right? So I see Saros getting a lot of starts this year. And not only that, he's a great goalie. He showed last year just how good he could be. He was a legitimate Vezina threat. He had 3 shutouts. His numbers were fantastic. He was constantly getting bombarded with shots. So in leagues where you get points for making saves, individual saves count as points. Oh boy, Saros is so valuable. In my league like that last year, I had him and he was just unbelievable. I really like Saros where he's going right now. Next is Roman Josi, and last year, not gonna lie, a little bit disappointing. 33 points in 48 games. Still had decent shots on goal and block shots numbers. Plus minus wasn't great, but even with that pace that he's at last year, he's on pace for 56 points, which is still pretty good for a defenseman. So you don't really have too much to worry about with Roman Josi. His peripherals are great with the block shots and the shots on goal. So I'm not too worried about him. I think he's going to do better offensively too this year. So if you want to draft Roman Josi, I don't hate it. Next is Filip Forsberg, and he's another guy who's just such a great player, but on not that great of a team, right? His centerman is Ryan Johansen, and he's got Tolvanen, who's pretty good, but you know, he could be a lot better on a better team. But Forsberg has so much talent. He's got an amazing shot. He's a really great player. Last year, 32 points in 39 games, so he's close-ish to a point per game pace, and I think he'll be able to keep up something similarly this year. And if he stays healthy, he's definitely worth a draft where he's currently being ranked. Next is Mattias Ekholm. Last year, had a decent season, 23 points in 48 games, basically a point every 2 games, and I'm expecting pretty much the same kind of thing from him this year, right? In 82 games, he should be able to get around 40 points, maybe 42, 43. Not too much more than that, but I wouldn't expect too much less than that too. He has a pretty safe floor. He's a very good defenseman. Next is Eeli Tolvanen. Last year had 22 points in 40 games, 11 goals, and he's a power play producer. That's his niche. 12 points, which is more than half of the points he had last year, were on the power play. Now we should continue to get that power play time, so I'm not too worried about his power play points going down or anything like that. But last year he only shot 65 times on net and scored 11 goals. That's not sustainable at all. So he's going to have to shoot on net a little bit more to keep up the pace he was on last year. Now I still like him despite his inflated shooting percentage because he'll still be top power play and top line in Nashville, so I'm not too worried about his production. Next is Ryan Johansen, and Ryan Johansen has been so bad these last 2 seasons fantasy-wise that he hasn't even been able to be fantasy relevant while being a top-line center. It's pretty bad. I'm not suddenly expecting things to change, but hey, if it somehow does, he'll be sitting in your free agency more than likely, and you can pick him up, right? Next are Matt Duchene, Mikael Granlund, and Luke Kunin. This is their entire second line. I don't absolutely hate any of these guys, but I'm definitely not drafting any of these guys. They could make for decent pickups when Nashville has a favorable schedule or the line gets on a hot streak, right? But I don't believe any of these guys are really season-long holds. I don't believe any of these guys are really good enough to have in your lineup the entire season. The only exception, if I had to choose one of these guys to have a decent season, it would have to be Mikael Granlund. He caught fire a little bit towards the end of the season last year with 7 points in his last 7 games. It is a small sample size, but he did look quite good. So maybe he can carry that momentum into this season and maybe bolster his numbers because we do know he can have great seasons. We've seen it in the past. That being said, I'm still not drafting him. I'm going to have to see it first. Next is Alexandre Carrier. And I'm not drafting Alexandre Carrier, don't get me wrong, but he's being drafted in 0% of leagues. And towards the end of the season last year, Carrier was getting a lot, and I mean a really good amount of power play time in Nashville. So if that continues and they continue to give him this power play time, well, suddenly he has a little bit of fantasy relevance, right? So I'm just going to wait and I'm going to see how it plays out, but definitely a guy to keep an eye out for. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.